There is a name on a magazine list this week, and the name is Harry's. The list honors the most influential people in sport. He earned the place for Invictus, the games he built for wounded veterans. That is real, we will say so plainly, but the same week gave us 3 more documents. A court filing in Ontario, a wedding list in Gloucestershire he was left off, and an old photograph posted the hour his good news broke. 1 week, 1 name, 4 very different pages. None of them was a scandal on its own. Read together, they tell a quieter story. Tonight we read all 4, slowly, in order, because one of them is the picture and the rest are the receipt. Here is why this particular week is worth your time. Royal drama comes and goes, and most of it is noise. This was not loud. There were no leaks, no shouting, no new interview. There was only a list, a post, a lawsuit, and an empty chair at a family wedding. 4 small things in 7 days. And small things lined up often say more than one big one. For years now, 2 stories have run side by side about this man. One story is managed. It says reconciliation is close, that the door is open, that the family wants him home. The other story is just the record, what happened, what was signed, who showed up, who did not. When those 2 stories disagree, you have to choose which one to trust. This channel chooses the record every time, not because the record is kind, because the record can be checked. Tonight, the record and the headlines tell 2 different versions of the same 7 days. We are going to lay both on the table, and we are going to let you decide which one is real. Tonight, we are going through the full picture, the Time magazine honor, and the one name missing from the write-up, the Instagram post that arrived within hours, and the date stamp people noticed on it, the Canadian veteran suing over an injury at the games and who he is actually suing, and the cousin's wedding that nearly every senior royal attended except one. Under all 4 sits the same question. Is the door to reconciliation really still open? Or has it quietly closed while the headlines kept saying otherwise? Let's start with the man at the center because his story is the frame for everything else. Most of you watching did not learn this story from a book. You lived it. If you watched that funeral in 1997, you remember the boy walking behind his mother's coffin. He was 12. The whole world felt for that child. That boy grew into a soldier. He flew in Afghanistan. He served for 10 years under the name Captain Wales, and in 2014 he took something real from that service and built it into Invictus. Invictus is not a small thing. It began in London with more than 400 competitors from 13 nations. It has since been held in Orlando, Toronto, Sydney, The Hague, Dusseldorf, and last year in Vancouver and Whistler. Wounded men and women competing again in front of their families. For a lot of veterans, it gave them a reason to keep going. Harry has said as much, and the people who attend say it back to him. So when Time named him this month, it was naming that, not his title, not his Netflix deal. The games, he sits in the leaders category beside LeBron James, Lionel Messi, and Caitlin Clark. He told the magazine, in his own words, that sport held him together as a boy. That part is easy to believe. Now remember what Harry expected when he left in 2020. By his own account, he thought he could build a life in California on his own terms, independent income, his own charity, and, on his own timeline, a path back to the family. More than 5 years on, the record shows something different. The big commercial deals have shrunk or ended. The charities are under scrutiny from several directions, and the family appearances have all but stopped. Keep that frame in mind. Every document this week sits inside it. Let's start with the magazine, because the honor is where the week begins. Time included Harry on its first ever list of influential people in sport. The reaction online was fast and sharp. One of the most liked comments asked 4 words. Did he buy it? Now that comment is not fair, and it is not evidence, but it tells you the mood. A large part of the public has stopped taking these honors at face value. And they remember the Pat Tillman Award and the questions that followed it. Like Tillman left a professional football career and died in service. Each new honor pulls the old ones back into the room. That is not what any single award is meant to do. The interview itself broke no new ground. It covered the things Harry always covers: the power of sport, the lives the games have changed, familiar and sincere enough. But here is the part the coverage skipped. In a major American feature about her husband, Meghan's name appears nowhere. Not once, not in passing, not as a partner, not as a co-founder. For a couple who built a brand on togetherness, that absence is loud. A magazine called him influential. His own feature forgot to mention his wife, and it would be a small thing on its own. It did not stay on its own for long, because within hours, Meghan posted. The caption read, "Springing into summer." It was a carousel of family photos. Archie playing with an oversized ball on the lawn, Lilibet in a Beyoncé shirt, Meghan lying face down in the grass, a hat over her face, and then the one everyone stopped on. A black and white photo of Harry and Meghan close together from the early days, reportedly from 2017. Here is the detail the first reports missed. Eagle-eyed viewers spotted what looked like a date stamp left visible in the corner. In other words, the old photo may not have been cropped before it went up. A small thing, but small things are this channel's whole job. Line up the sequence. Harry gets rare, positive, solo coverage. Meghan is absent from it. And the same day, she posts a romantic photo of the two of them, 8 or 9 years old. Supporters say people share old photos all the time, and that is true. By every available signal, though, the timing was precise. From years of images, this one, on this day. You can call that coincidence. You can call it communication. Either way, it got more attention than the honor did. If Regina Wood is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people. Now let's talk about Scott Snow, because his story is where the week stops being about headlines. Scott Snow is a retired Navy diver from Canada. He is 43. In 2023, he was a poster boy for Team Canada at the Invictus Games in Germany. In his first wheelchair rugby match against Team USA, his chair tipped backward. He went down hard, head to the court. The injuries were severe: fractured vertebrae in his neck, fractured vertebrae in his lower spine, a torn muscle, head trauma. 2 surgeries followed. He can no longer get around his own home the way he used to. For a time, he had to move into a retirement home in Kingston, Ontario, just to manage day to day. He was 43, living in a retirement home after competing for his country. Now here is the part the loud coverage gets wrong, and the part that matters most. Scott Snow is not suing the Invictus Games Foundation. He is suing the Canadian government, the Department of National Defence, and the Armed Forces for $2.4 million. And the reason is a gap in the paperwork. Serving members on the team were insured for injuries at the games. Veterans, men who had finished their service, like Scott, were not. They were told to arrange their own coverage. In the terms document of more than 30 pages, insurance is mentioned exactly once. Snow says no one ever walked him through that line. He arrived at an event built to honor wounded veterans. He assumed someone had made sure he was covered. He was wrong. In his words, it is a 2-tier system. If the man beside him took the same fall, that man is covered for life. Scott pays with a credit card. Read that sequence one more time, slowly. Harry made the sports list. Scott Snow made a retirement home. One name went up in lights. The other went on a court filing. That is the cost. And it did not land where the honor did. To be precise, the lawsuit is against the government, not the foundation. And that distinction is fair to state. But the games carry his name, his speeches, his promise, and a man who answered that promise is paying for it himself. And the money question sits right next to him. Last year's games in Vancouver and Whistler reportedly cost about $63 million for 543 competitors. That is roughly $118,000 per athlete. By comparison, the American Warrior Games, same mission, runs on about $2 million a year. Reasonable people have asked a fair question. Could some of that money have bought prosthetics, ramps, or accessible vehicles instead? Things that change a daily life in ways you can measure. That is not an attack on the mission. It is a question about where the mission's money goes, and it is exactly the kind of question a man in a retirement home is entitled to ask. This is what we mean when we talk about the picture and the receipt. The magazine list is the picture. The court filing is the receipt. Both are true, they just point in opposite directions. Subscribe to Regina Word and drop a comment below. Do you think that Instagram post was timed on purpose? Or was it just a mother sharing summer photos? There are honest answers on both sides. Now let's talk about the wedding because it completes the picture. On the 6th of June, Harry's cousin, Peter Phillips, married Harriet Sperling. Peter is Princess Anne's son. Harriet is an NHS nurse from Gloucestershire. The ceremony was small and private at a parish church near where she grew up. The guest list, though, was not small in meaning. King Charles was there. Queen Camilla was there. William and Catherine were there. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie were there. Princess Anne, the groom's mother, of course. Harry was not invited. And here is the receipt the rumor mill skips. This was not framed by anyone as a palace plot. A friend of the couple told Hello magazine, the plain version. Peter and Harry simply have not spoken in years and lost touch. The royal correspondent Emily Nash told Page 6 the same thing. She called it a natural cooling off down to who actually stays in touch with whom. That is the documented reason, and it is almost sadder than a feud. A feud means there is still heat. This is just distance. Remember, Peter was a guest at Harry's own wedding in 2018. They stood in the same room, on the same side, less than a decade ago. Now one of them marries and the other is not told until the press reports it. Andrew was not invited either, but that has a clear reason behind it. For Harry, there is no scandal to point to, only the quiet fact that the relationship faded. A wedding is not an official event. No protocol decides the list. Presence at a family wedding reflects one thing: who you are still close to. And nearly the whole family was close enough to come. One more detail rode along with the wedding report: a claim that Harry no longer even has William's phone number. That claim was pushed back on this week and denied. And the pushback is the interesting part. Someone chose to respond publicly to that one small detail. You do not bother to deny a thing that did not land somewhere tender. We cannot prove the phone number claim either way, so we will not pretend to. But here is something we can check. When were these two brothers last seen together? Not at the funeral in 2022, as some keep saying. They were both at the coronation in 2023 and both at a family memorial in August 2024. People magazine reported they sat apart and did not interact. That is the real record. Two brothers in the same room, not speaking. The watching world once found their bond moving because it looked real. The camera has not caught it in a long time. Now let's bring this back to the bigger pattern because none of these four things stands alone. Step back and look at the shape of the last 5 years. Harry left expecting the pressure he created would open a door. The book, the documentary, the interviews. The idea was that honesty would force a reckoning and a reckoning would lead home. The record shows close to the opposite. The institution said little and kept working. When Catherine announced her cancer in March 2024, the public response was enormous and warm. It was personal, and it was believed. The contrast with the Sussex output of the same stretch was stark. One disclosure came from necessity. The other came wrapped in deals. People felt the difference, and the numbers reflected it. Listen to the people closest to the story. Emily Nash, who covers the family for a living, did not describe a conspiracy this week. She described a relationship that quietly went cold. Jenny Bond, who reported on the royals for the BBC for years, said the smaller, quieter weddings now suit a family tired of headlines. Read those two together. One says the warmth is gone. The other says the family has learned to plan around the man who brings the noise. Neither is cruel. Both are devastating in their own way. That is the pattern. Not a war, a slow, managed distance. The door, in the briefings, is always about to open. In the record, it stays shut. No invitation, no confirmed meeting with his father, no appearance with his brother in years. You do not need a theory to see it. You only need to keep reading the pages as they come. To be fair, let's put the strongest version of the other side on the table. Start with the honor. Founding a global event for wounded veterans and sustaining it for over a decade is a real form of influence in sport. You can argue Time got that right. On the lawsuit, the fair point is the one we already made. Scott Snow is suing the Canadian government, not Invictus, and the insurance gap sits in Canadian military paperwork. Blaming Harry directly for that is not clean. On the photo, people post old pictures every day, for no reason but love. And on the wedding, drifting apart from a cousin is ordinary. Most families have a relative who simply faded from the group. None of that is sinister on its own. That reading has real merit. Here is where it stops holding. It explains each thing alone. It cannot explain all four landing in the same 7 days. One coincidence is a coincidence. Four, pointing the same direction, is a pattern. And a pattern is not something you can post your way out of. So let's go back to where we started. The magazine list, the Instagram post, the court filing, the empty seat at the wedding. 4 documents, 1 week, 1 name. Across all of them, the list is still on Time's website tonight. The photo is still on Meghan's page. The lawsuit is still moving through an Ontario court. And the seat at that wedding stayed empty while the rest of the family filled the room. The phone has no proven record of the call. The wedding had no place set for him. The meeting with his father has no date. 3 small absences, and they all point the same way. The briefings will keep saying the door is open. The record keeps showing it shut. And you have watched this man long enough to judge for yourself which one has earned your trust. Here is the line we keep coming back to. A recognition arrived the same week, an invitation did not. One was printed in a magazine. The other was never sent. That is the story of his last 5 years pressed into 7 days. The picture said summer. The receipt said something colder. And in the end, on this channel, we read the receipt. So here's the question for you tonight. Think back over the last few years of this story. Has the door to reconciliation ever truly been open? Or have we just been told it was? Maybe you believe there is still a real path home. Maybe you think the distance became permanent a long time ago. Both are honest reads, and the comments are where this gets interesting. If you watched these brothers grow up, tell me, when do you think the bond actually broke? Drop your honest take below. Subscribe to Regina Wood so you do not miss what comes next. And a like genuinely helps us reach more people who want the receipts, not the rumors. See you in the next one.